We are here with Danica Lohr, with host of Lit Happens, but she's here as storyteller today. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, how are you?
I'm fine. It's been a busy month. It's a good time for stories.
It is. And so tell us why storytelling is so important.
Well, storytelling is one of the oldest art forms in the world, and it's sort of one of my mentors in storytelling, or one of my heroes in storytelling, talks about how storytelling is sometimes pushed aside as the cousin that everybody sort of forgets about. But really, it's the grandparent of all the other art forms, because when you look at how people express themselves, there's always a thread of story in that. Our writers are storytellers. Our visual artists, they're always trying to make a connection. Now, storytelling it's interesting and it's special in a way because it doesn't exist without an audience. It's not like when you can paint a picture and put it on the wall and someone can walk past and they can feel something or they can see something. With storytelling, you actually need an audience to be with you in the space, in that time. It's immediate and immediately gratifying as well. But it's important because we live in a world where people are disconnected. And so if we can take the time to sit and to tell stories and to listen to stories, we enrich our circle, we enrich our community, we learn about each other, and as we get to know each other, we value people more. And as a storyteller, I guess even more than my voice, my ears are the most important tool that I have to listen to what's going on around me, to learn, and to make those connections with people.
So who was your mentor?
Oh, well, I really didn't have an actual mentor, but I have these heroes. Mm-hmm. So one of my heroes in storytelling is a Mi'kmaq storyteller from out east called Robert Seven Crows. Mm-hmm. And so he tells stories with the drum, and he talks about knowing space. And those writers and storytellers in Saskatchewan, we are people who also we connect to space, we connect to the place. And so he talks about not being able to tell stories about a place unless you've actually walked there and been there and experienced it and ate the food and smelled what it smells like. And storytelling is very sensory. It's when I tell stories, I bring in those senses. I talk about. If I'm talking about my grandmother, I don't just paint a picture of a beautiful woman with curly gray hair. I have this image that includes the smell of her bread baking in the kitchen, of being there in the kitchen when she pulled out all those loaves. And if you were there and she cut off the end slice and you got that heel that was crispy on the outside and soft, really soft on the inside, and you had some fresh butter and some local honey. And I can remember taking bites of that bread and the honey and the butter running down your arm, and you just wishing that your tongue was long enough. And so when you talk about that, it makes people hungry because they have that memory as well. They have that memory of something delicious, and whether it was something that their grandmother made or their mother made or one of their aunts. And so storytelling connects us in so many sensory ways.
Well, you're making me hungry too. And my mom, when I came home from school, she always had bread. Homemade bread, and what we used to do is cut off the loaves, the bread, the crusts, because we love the crusts, mm-hmm. and they were so delicious. So you're putting me back there, for sure.
Well, that's what storytelling does. It brings us, it works really well with both our memories and our imagination. Mm-hmm. It's really good for the brain. There's been scientific studies that talk about how storytelling is really good for children because it's bringing the brain and expanding the different workings of the brain. And it's really good for people of all ages and seniors. And when I tell stories in seniors' homes, you see those memories coming up. And you see that their imaginations still work too. I've told stories all over Canada, and when I tell stories in Saskatchewan and the place is familiar to the children, they instantly go there. I tell a fishing story, and when I tell that story, I sometimes ask the kids, well, who's been fishing? And in Saskatchewan, 95% of the kids can put up their hands. Or I'll ask if they've been to the lake, and it's without fail, almost every child in that school has been to a lake. And so when I talk about what the lake smells like and what it looks like and what it feels like, when I talk about the buzzing of the mosquitoes, they start to scratch because it's so real to them. Mm-hmm. Now, when I take that story into the inner city in Toronto, into one of those big schools where the children live in neighborhoods that are apartments and they don't get the opportunity to spend the time in the nature that we get here in Saskatchewan, I started to think, now, is this going to connect with them in the same way? And you know what? It doesn't connect with them in exactly the same way, but there's a great connection made. The children here, they have the memories. They know exactly what's going on. But the children who haven't been to a lake in Saskatchewan or even a lake in Ontario, they still can be there because they have the imagination. Just like when I hear stories about England and places that I've never been, it doesn't mean that I enjoy them less than someone who's walked those paths. It's just that my brain is connecting in a different way. And so our memories and our imaginations are both critically important to the art of storytelling.
Well, I've heard you tell stories, and you do an excellent job, by the way. But so how did you specifically get involved in storytelling?
Oh, well, my first career after university was working with young people. And it was a ministry work. So it was working with young people. It was helping them to find their place in community, helping them to just be accepted and to sort of overcome some of those challenges that teenagers face. And I always found that when we could tell stories, either stories that were folk tales or fairy tales or stories of our own experiences, it brought us closer together. And so it was always it was better than, teaching and saying, well, you should do this because this will make your life happier and you'll be safer. But if you could tell stories and listen to their stories, it really made a more valuable connection, a stronger connection. And, even back in school, myself, I remembered things because of stories. I didn't remember dates. I didn't remember, the where on the map, the capital of this country. Those sorts of things didn't stick with me. But if someone told me a story, then I would remember something. And I even had math teachers I had a math teacher who was a fantastic storyteller. And so I was able to remember things, not because of the formulas and the numbers, though some of that I could remember, but the things that really stuck were stories. And so the teachers that I had who were storytellers influenced me. And then I was involved with drama and music, and that was a telling of story as well when you present those things as a young person. And then I had another job in a drama department where I was teaching children's story theater. And I worked as a newspaper reporter. And so with that, I was listening to people and trying to tell their stories in a way that showed their passion, showed what was going on, showed what was important in the community. So it's always been part of what I've done. And I've been a professional storyteller in libraries and schools and festivals and many other places for 20 years now, just over 20 years.
So you've kind of had an eclectic career developing to where you are. But is there a school for storytelling or classes you can take, or?
Well, I think for me, life has been the classroom, but I've always taken writing workshops and storytelling workshops and paid attention to people. And it's back to that listening and paying attention to what's going on in the world. And when I take a walk, I write notes for myself because I don't want to forget what's going on around me. So I'm always collecting ideas. And there are classes that you can take. We have an organization in Canada called the Storytellers of Canada, Contour de Canada. And it's a national organization, and I've been a part of it, I think, for about 8 years. And that organization holds a conference every summer. And there are workshops and classes, usually a master class before the conference. There have been festivals in other parts of the country where there are always people sharing. And so coming up in Peterborough this summer, I'm actually giving one of the workshops at the Storytelling Festival. And I give workshops here in Saskatoon about storytelling and creative writing and just that collecting and capturing of ideas. So I have a few more of those coming up in Saskatchewan in the next few months.
So what are some of the projects that you're working on now?
Projects that I'm working on now. Well, the workshops are a big project. I also I'm in a grant period, so I'm working with some support of the Saskatchewan Arts Board. And that's something that's such an honor and such a privilege to have as an artist in Saskatchewan. The pot of money to share to help people develop their art is constantly shrinking, and to have received an Arts Board grant is like winning an Academy Award. It really is. As a storyteller, I don't have physical books, and when someone has a physical book, then they have something that they can present to show that this is what I do, and they can be validated in getting awards, and they can be validated in book sales, and being able to share something that you can actually hold on to and touch. As a storyteller, the validation that I received by getting a Saskatchewan Arts Board really not only validates me as a storyteller, but it also validates the art form. Because as a storyteller, there's a constant need to advocate for the art form, because people forget, and people borrow the word storytelling. So people use it for everything from creating an ad to sell cars to putting a presentation together for a corporate boardroom, the word storytelling. But when you go back to the ancient and the classic idea of being an oral storyteller and sitting with an audience in front of you, and they're not looking at an iPad, and there doesn't need to be big sounds and a band playing and flashy lights behind you all the time, and just to have the power of the voice. It's an incredible art form. It makes incredible connections, and it's something that's so critical to us as human beings. And so to be a storyteller means to also be engaging and encouraging people to be audiences and to be storytellers themselves.
Well, it's becoming a rare art form, but you're bringing it back, so that's wonderful. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to hear you tell stories or get some advice about storytelling? Do you have a website, or?
I do have a blog, but Facebook is always the easiest thing to find me. So just look for Danica Lore on Facebook. I'm the only one. I have a unique name. I'm lucky that way. So there aren't a lot of Danica Lores. I can be found on Twitter, and people can always contact me on email, danicalore@gmail.com.
Well, thank you very much for being on our show.
Thanks, Marian.
That was Danica Lore with Storytelling. I hope you enjoyed today's show with Corey Baumgartner with Read Saskatoon and Danica Lore as a storyteller. If you'd like to share your story, contact me and tell me why you rock. Thanks for rocking in and having a conversation with Marian. I'm Marian, and you rock.